George Washington was the first president of the United States of America. But most of the stories you have heard about Washington, his fighting the British during the American Revolution, crossing the Delaware, or wintering at Valley Forge, come from the time before he was president. And many stories about him are only half-truths or complete myths. The story of young George chopping down a cherry tree and not being able to lie about it was made up by an author writing a biography of Washington to help illustrate his honesty and make his childhood more interesting. Though Washington's role as general in the American Revolution often gets the most attention, his years as president were some of the most important in America's history. As the nation's first president, Washington set precedents, examples that those who came after him followed. After being sworn into office, Washington began to shape the new federal government. He appointed 4 well-known men to help him. He chose economics expert Alexander Hamilton as the Secretary of the Treasury. He named Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence, as Secretary of State. Military officer Henry Knox became Secretary of War, and former Virginia governor and lawyer Edmund Randolph was chosen as Attorney General. Washington soon began consulting with this group before making important decisions, and the presidential cabinet was born. The United States was deeply in debt after the American Revolution. Washington supported plans to set up a national bank system and to pay off all federal and state debts. This decision was unpopular with many people in the southern states. They thought it was unfair because they had already paid off their own wartime debts and felt other states should do the same. But Washington gained the support of the southern states by agreeing to build a new national capital in the South. That capital became Washington, D.C. In 1794, unrest was brewing in many states over a government tax on making whiskey. When farmers and others began rioting against the tax, Washington rode into Pennsylvania with an army of 13,000 men and quickly put down what became known as the Whiskey Rebellion. He showed that armed rebellion would not be tolerated in the American democracy. But Washington was also a man of peace. He knew that American prosperity depended on trade with Britain. The British bought 3/4 of America's exports and supplied 90% of its imports. So when France went to war against Britain and asked for U.S. support, Washington refused to choose sides and managed to stay out of the war. In his farewell address, Washington urged the leaders who came after him to continue this policy of neutrality with Europe, a policy that remained in place for many decades. After serving 2 terms as president, Washington declined to run for a 3rd term. He retired to his Virginia estate in 1797. This decision set an important precedent, too. For nearly 150 years, no other president ran for more than 2 terms, and the 2-term limit became part of the Constitution in 1951. During Washington's presidency, the U.S. established a successful federal government, became financially prosperous, and avoided war. Through these actions and many more, George Washington held the young nation together, helped it grow, and set a course for its bright future.